Hello friends, my name is Udo Sendaidukai, and in this first video on Bitwig 6 beta, I'll show you everything you need to know about the new alias clips for audio, MIDI and automation. What has changed in the automation and how you can turn automation into modulation and vice versa. Plus, there are 2 additional mini tutorials in between. If you like, you can also support me on Buy Me a Coffee. And maybe I can buy better equipment someday. All information and further links are in the video description. Let's get started. First things first. Bitwig Studio 6 now only works on computers with AVX2 instruction support on the CPU. This is something that was integrated into CPUs from around 2013 onwards. Unfortunately, this affected one of my computers, which means that the new version 6 no longer runs on it. But of course it still works on my music production machine. I want to start with 2 great and very useful shortcuts before I get into the topic. And if you notice that the shortcuts are not working, go to the settings and reset the shortcuts to the default keyboard mapping settings. Then everything will work as described in the documentation. Shift and numpad plus minus to increase or decrease the height of all tracks simultaneously. And Shift plus Z, or this symbol in the bottom left below all tracks, an arrow pointing up and down, to turn on and off selective or focused autozoom of tracks. When this is activated, all tracks initially remain at their current height. However, if I increase the height of my currently focused track, for example, and then switch to another track, the height setting for the new track follows, and the old track is reduced to its previous size. If you work with many tracks, you can set all tracks to minimal size here. Since the new version, you can finally see the content in this size, and only the track you're currently editing is enlarged. This gives me a great overview of many tracks and allows me to drill down into the details of one track at a time. This also applies to automation tracks or automation lanes. Looped clips now also have a visual add with a brightness shading. The beginning of the loop is shaded lightly and the end of the loop is shaded darkly. A major new feature is alias clips. Alias clips are clips that are identical because they contain the same notes or audio. In other words, they have the same fingerprint or pattern. If changes are made to any of these alias clips, all associated alias clips will also change. In principle, this is a bit like a looped clip, except that the alias clips can be scattered widely across the track without being contiguous. And alias clips can be of different lengths as long as they contain the same content. So, how are alias clips created or connected? There are many flexible options. If I want to create an alias clip from an existing clip, I grab the clip with the left mouse button and hold down the Alt key while dragging the clip to the new position. When I then release the mouse button, I have created an alias clip. It's recognizable by the paperclip. If I forgot to do this when creating new identical clips, either with Ctrl D or by dragging and Ctrl, I can right-click on one of 2 clips to open the pop-up menu. Directly below the color picker is a pattern menu entry and the display that shows the name of the current pattern, aka clip. If the clip only shows a number, then Bitwig automatically assigned it depending on the bar the clip is currently at. The pattern submenu displays all clips or patterns on that track. More specifically, when you click on a MIDI clip, all MIDI clips are displayed. For an audio clip, all audio clips on that track are displayed. This can happen from time to time with hybrid tracks. If I now select a clip and open the pattern pop-up menu with its submenu, I can alias that clip to, for example, just one other clip. The same menu is also located in the inspector at the top left. I can repeat this process until all clips that have a potential alias clip are linked. But if I already know that I want to link all clips as aliases, I can do it with just one click. In this pattern menu and its submenu, there's the menu item Merge Duplicate Patterns. Click it once and all clips that appear twice or more than once are immediately linked as aliases. By the way, the menu item Merge Duplicate Patterns is also available by right-clicking on the track header. If all clips are linked with the alias function, the corresponding menu shows the number of clips linked as aliases. And of course, all of this can be undone individually or all at once using the Make Unique function. To do this, I select the desired alias clip, then right-click to open the context menu and select the Make Unique option. And that clip is now a solitary clip again. And of course, I can do this with many or all clips. All I have to do is to select all the clips that should be independent again and then call up the Make Unique function again. The function is, of course, also located in the inspector menu at the top left. By the way, all of this works the same way with the new automation clips. I'll come to that in a moment. First, let's take a look at what changed with automation. The automation display has changed slightly. If there's no automation for a track, the indicator in the track header shows this with a plus sign in the bottom left corner. If one or more automations already exist, this is indicated by the greater symbol. But let's stick with the plus for now. If you left click on it for the first time, a pop-up menu opens. And now things get exciting. The pop-up menu is divided into 3 parts. The upper third contains all the most recently touched or used parameters of the devices and plugins in this track. They are listed in order with the most recently touched parameters at the top. This list has a maximum of 10 entries. This means that if you have been tinkering with the sound and now want to add automation for one or more parameters, you'll find the most recent parameters here. Simply click on the entry, the automation lane is created underneath, and I can begin drawing the automation. In the middle section of the pop-up is a list of all the track's parameters and all available devices and plugins. And in the lower third is an entry, namely Add MIDI Lane. This then opens another window containing the MIDI channel and the MIDI type like pitch bend, channel pressure, CCs or control change messages, and NRPNs, non-registered parameter numbers, the manufacturer-specific extensions to the MIDI standard. And below that, a selection box for the MIDI CCs from 0 to 119 for each control change message, or a parameter entry for the NRPNs. There are 2 important shortcuts for automation. First, the Shift+A toggle to toggle between expanded and collapsed automation tracks. That is, to show all or hide all automations for that track. And secondly, there is the shortcut A. Again, a toggle that turns the automation mode function on or off. This toggles the display slightly so that the MIDI notes or audio waveforms are grayed out and moved to the background, allowing me to draw automations directly over the notes or audio. If you don't want to remember the shortcut, you can also click the automation symbol with the star at the very top left next to the arranger to turn it on and off. When the display is switched to the new automation mode with A and the automation track is displayed above the MIDI or audio track, the last touched parameter is offered as automation, regardless of whether the automation track exists or not. And if the track is now big enough, I can start editing the automation immediately. If the track is too slim, I first have to make it bigger. I can either drag it bigger with a mouse Or I can use the following shortcut, Shift and numpad plus to make it bigger, or later Shift numpad minus to make it slim. Again, if I want to create an automation lane for any other parameter, I just need to click on that parameter in this automation mode, and I can start drawing the automation. If I want to edit existing automation lanes, I can click on the label or the small arrow to the left of the peak meter directly in the right part of the track header, and I'll get another 3-part pop-up menu. But this time, the upper third contains all existing automations, and the lower third remains the same. So the middle third offers all possible parameters that can be created with the device and plugins, and the lower third allows you to create another MIDI lane with MIDI CCs and NRBNs and so on. In this automation mode view, you can right-click on an empty automation lane in the track header and select Add Permanent Automation Lane. This creates an automation lane for the last clicked parameter, which, as the name suggests, remains there permanently. This could potentially be used if automation is to be added for this parameter later anyway, for example for the volume. Or another example, when creating a project template, I create this automation so that it is always immediately available without having to click on any parameters or select it from a menu. So let's get to the new automation clips. First of all, let's say that pretty much everything you can do with MIDI and audio clips can be done with automation clips. For example, they can be stretched, looped, reversed, doubled, duplicated, cut and joined. They can also be created very easily, and there are lots of possibilities. Even more possibilities than with regular audio and MIDI clips. Select the pointer tool on 1 or the pencil tool on 3. Hold down the Alt key and then draw the clip, and you're done. With the pencil tool and Alt held down, I can even draw into existing clips or paint over it, or draw a new clip into an existing clip. With the pointer tool, I can either draw only up to the next clip or completely over it. In both cases, the overpainted automation is, of course, painted over. There are even more options that don't necessarily have anything to do with creating a clip, but for that always check the status bar at the bottom. All options are always listed here. Use the pointer tool on key 1 or the time selection tool on key 2 to select an area of your choice. Right-click and select Wrap as Automation Clip from the pop-up menu, or simply press Ctrl-G. Et voila! A clip will be created from this. Alternatively, you can also use Ctrl-J for the consolidate function. And you're done. With the next method, I create an automation clip exactly the size of the MIDI or audio clip above it. I select the pointer tool on the 1 and simply hold down the Alt key, move the mouse arrow to the automation track below the clip, and then simply click with the left mouse button. And zack! The automation clip is created for this automation track. I can also create a clip for all automation tracks at once by holding down the Shift key instead of just the Alt key and then clicking the left mouse button. And there you have automation clips for all automation lanes. All of this works even if there's no audio or MIDI clip above it and it's the size of the currently set bar grid. Hold down the pointer tool and the Alt key, click and the automation clip is created. Or use Shift and Alt and click to create clips for all automation lanes in the corresponding grid size. And of course, an automation clip can also be turned into normal automation again. Right-clicking on the clip or selecting multiple clips opens up a pop-up menu, and at the bottom you'll find the Flatten as Track Automation function. When this is selected, the clips disappears and you get normal automation again. Alternatively, you can use the shortcut Ctrl, Shift and G. And of course, an audio or MIDI clip can also be moved with automation. To do this, I simply enable Global Automation Lock at the top of the transport bar between the bar and time display and the loop symbol below the automation reinsert symbol. When this is enabled, all automation is fixed in its position. In other words, it's locked. And I can move my clips back and forth without the automation following. If I have multiple automations under a clip and only want to move a few automation clips, but not all of them with my clip, I click in the track header of the corresponding automation tracks, and then I get the automation lock options in the inspector. I click this automation lock option and repeat this in each automation track where the corresponding clip should not be moved. I then move my clip with the desired automation clips and then deactivate the automation locks in the individual automation tracks. And just to remind you, Alias clips work just like audio clips and MIDI clips. Here too, I can define individual automation clips or all matching clips or patterns at once as aliases or make them unique again. There are now three ways to edit automation: the expandable automation lane, the automation editor, which is now opened and closed with the shortcut E instead of the previous A, and the newly assigned shortcut A, which switches directly to the new automation mode on the audio or MIDI clip itself. All standard functions are still the same, except for new editing tools like the spray can. So, set points, bend a straight line into curve with Alt, or bend the close-fitting lines into curves with Alt on a point. With the spray can tool mentioned above, I can create horizontal lines with ease. I can either hold down the left mouse button and drag the spray can across the bar grid, creating steps spaced according to the set bar grid, or I can also hold down the Alt key, which allows me to draw a very long horizontal line, always snapping to the bar grid until I get tired. Or I can hold down the Shift key in addition to the Alt key and can draw a horizontal line indefinitely without snapping to the bar grid. Or finally, I can press the Control key in addition to the Alt and the Shift keys, creating a clip immediately. Automation clips have added or expanded even more great editing options. If I have more complex automation in a clip and I just want to move a line up or down, I press Ctrl and then the left mouse button and move that line. This allows me to adjust individual lines or curves up or down in an automation. And I can also do this with the entire automation in that clip by holding Ctrl and Shift. This selects all the points, lines and curves that I can now move up or down. And I can do even more if I do it in a time selection instead of a clip. Here's how it works. Permanently select the time selection tool. Briefly press and release the 2 key. Then select the area you want to edit. Then hold down the Alt key. Now I have 5 areas that I can manipulate in different ways. In short, top, bottom, middle, right and left. With the time selection tool still selected and the Alt key held down, I can move the mouse over these areas until the corresponding area becomes slightly brighter. The entire area is brighter in the middle, and if I now also hold down the left mouse button, I can move the entire area evenly up or down. If I'm in the upper area with a mouse instead, and the mouse arrow has changed, then hold down the left mouse button and move it down. Then I push the highest points closer and closer to the lowest points. I'm reducing the dynamic range in the lower area, so to speak. It's basically downward compression. The same thing, but in reverse. If I start with the mouse at the lower area, still holding down the Alt key and then press the left mouse button again, I move the lower points towards the upper points. This also reduces the dynamic range, but moves the lower area closer to the upper area. It's basically upward compression. If I start with the mouse on the left side and move the mouse up or down, it appears as if the automation on the right side is secured with a rope. I move the left side up and down and the rest of the automation follows less and less to the right. And on the right side, it's the exact opposite. To put it simply, when editing from the center, I can raise or lower the entire automation. When editing from the top or bottom, I use downward compression or upward compression of the automation. When editing from the left or right, I can use a kind of dynamic fade in and fade out, or simply a combination of several or all of the options one after the other. There's also been some improvements to simple editing of corner points. Previously, a point could only be moved to the next point where it would then be blocked by that point. Now you can move a point across the entire automation, but this will then destroy the structure it passes over. As long as the mouse button is held down, I can simply go back and everything will be as before. If I release the mouse button, the new automation will be applied. And if it was a mistake, the undo function still works. If you still miss the old blocked move function, you can simply move the point in the top left corner of the inspector. Then the next point will block again, just like in the old version. There's even more you can do with the inspector. For example, if I select several points and then change the percentage value of the curvature in the inspector, all the lines around the selected points will curve outward or inward. This allows me to assign a specific characteristic to an entire area. Additionally, in Curvature, I can use the small arrow on the right side to open the histogram and influence all the curves differently with the mean, scale and chaos values. The inspector also has a value field. Adjusting the value there pushes the automation upwards and then compress it here, or downwards and then compress it at the bottom. Here you also find the histogram with mean, scale and chaos values. The spread function at the bottom of the inspector's list assigns a random value to each point. This ensures that slightly different automation level is assigned to each time the clip is played back. Here as well, the mean, scale and chaos values can be adjusted using the histogram. If I want to make the randomness a little less random and retain my randomly created effect, I simply select the automation clip, then go to the inspector and click on the word random besides the seed option, which is the dice roll by default. This then transforms it into a seed, a basket full of random numbers generated once and used again and again. This way, I have saved my random values for repeatable use. And if you are now wondering why, if I want random numbers and I suddenly generate virtually no random numbers at all, good question. And a very simple answer. The seed with its fixed randomly generated numbers introduces a variation per clip, which you regenerate each time you click the seed. This ensures that this variation is reliably repeated at exactly this point in your clip. This could possibly be called recorded humanization, but it can give a track that's certain something. And then there's the hold function in the inspector. If one or more automation points are selected, this hold function transforms the curves into steps, so to speak, horizontal lines, always from one point to the next. So instead of smooth automation curves, hard steps are created. Clicking hold again transforms the steps back into lines and curves. And if I haven't changed anything in the meantime, the same curves are even restored. And now comes a little tutorial within the tutorial. I'll show you another cool trick for turning a beautiful curved line into individual steps without having to painfully set each individual point. I call this a glissando, although that's probably not the right term. If you know the correct term, please let me know in the comments. First, I create a diagonal line in a clip. Then I bend this diagonal line with Alt and click. Then I set the bar grid to the desired spacing using period or comma. Then I select the knife tool, hold down the Alt key and move the mouse over the entire clip. This splits it into many smaller clips, thus setting the edit points. Now I select all the individual clips using either the time selection or pointer tool, right click and select Wrap as Automation Clip or Consolidate, or simply just press Ctrl G or Ctrl J. Then I have a whole clip with many cut points. I can now select all of them with a pointer tool and click Hold in the inspector. This gives me the perfect round curve with stepped automation. If you like this trick, please write in the comments, follow the white rabbit. Of course, all of this now works the same way in the clip launcher, except that the automation have to be edited in the editor below, which makes sense since scenes can't be stretched infinitely. Another advantage of the clip launcher is that different automation clips can now be played for a single MIDI or audio clip. And the automation clips in the clip launcher, of course, also have the same functions displayed in the inspector, including clip functions like launch cue, play mode, on release, cue to loop, and next action. And as a very special treat, Bitwig has built in a way that allows me to use automation as modulation in the MSEC modulators, segments and curves. And modulations from segments and curves can also be used as automation. It's easy with drag and drop. If I've selected a section of automation with the time selection tool, or I have an automation clip, I simply drag the clip or section down into the modulation section of my device or plugin, and the segments modulator is immediately created. If I hold down the Alt key while dragging, a curves modulator is inserted. A small drawback is that the selected automation time unit isn't transferred to the MSECs. I'd like to have a shift or control key that automatically transfers this time and enters it properly, and of course the other way around from the MSEC to the automation. But I can still transfer it with a small manual workaround, so it always adapts to the project speed. Another small tutorial within the tutorial. I first create an automation clip from the automation to be transferred. Click on the clip, and in the properties in the inspector I see the length. For example, 0.2.1.75. The first number 0 is the quarter note. The second number is the 8th note. The 1 is the 16th note, and the .75 is a mix of 32th and 64th notes, or even smaller. A 32th note is .50 and a 64th note is .25. Logically, it keeps halving. In the modulators, I only can enter 32th notes. So you can convert my 0.2.1.75 to 32th notes. That's then 2 times 8th notes equals 4 times 16 notes equals 8 times 32th notes. Then 1 16th note equals 2 32th notes, and .75 equals 1.5 32th notes. In total, 11.5 times 32th notes, which I then enter either in the segments or the curves modulator. In the segments modulator, I could enter the seconds or milliseconds directly, which I also see in the inspector when making a selection with the time selection tool. But if I intend to change tempo, it will break. If not, it's faster with the segments modulator. And finally, a very important point, automation clips can easily be saved to your library for future use. Right-click on the automation clip and select Save Arranger Clip to Library at the bottom. In the clip launcher, the menu item is Save Launcher Clip to Library. These automation clips can be loaded in the side browser under the asterisk Everything, File Kind, Automation Clips. And the modulator curves can also be loaded under the asterisk Everything, File Kind, Curves. Or in the clip launcher, click the plus sign or right-click Insert from Library and then use the pop-up browser to navigate to the automation category or the other categories. What do you think about the new alias clips and the fact that automations can now also be used as clips or BW curves? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for your time and attention, and I hope to see you soon again in the next video. Stay healthy, save the future, take care, see you then. Ciao ciao.